Last week, I had the delightful opportunity to explore Ireland, journeying along the wild Atlantic Way from Westport through the breathtaking Causeway coastal route and concluding in vibrant Belfast. This whirlwind 7-day adventure was beautifully orchestrated by Fáilte Ireland, Tourism Ireland, and Tourism Northern Ireland. One of the highlights of this press trip was traveling with an incredible group of fellow women travel writers, including Juanita Ing, Paula Worthington, and of course, Kathy Buckworth. Kathy, a former travel contributor to What She Said, is not only a regular on CHCH TV and the host of the podcast Go To Grandma, but is also a current contributor at Journeywoman. Today, she joins me to share some can't miss experiences that will inspire your next trip to the Emerald Isle. Welcome back to the show, Kathy. It's really great to have you here.
It's great to be here. I can't wait to talk about this trip. It was so fantastic.
Yeah, and I kind of love this full circle moment. Like, we were both travel contributors on this show, so it's really nice that this has come together like this, totally unplanned. So based on our recent adventure, what would you say, why would you say Ireland is such a perfect destination for women travelers?
You know, with Journeywomen, we focus a lot on, or entirely on women solo travelers at the age of 50 plus. And I think for a long time, in particular, Northern Ireland has had that sort of stigma, we'll just say it, attached to it. But of course, we all grew up listening to the troubles and things that were going on in Belfast and Northern Ireland, Derry, etc. So I think there's still that sort of lingering sort of, is it okay there? Can I travel there? Particularly, you know, as a woman by myself walking the streets at night, it's fine. So this is what, this is a great thing that I'm going to tell you about. So not only the Republic of Ireland, but Northern Ireland, which of course we visited both of those. I found it to be a very welcoming country, both of them, as well as everyone's so friendly. They talk to you, they tell you their stories. Too many sometimes, but tons of stories. And, one of the things that was great about some of the stories we heard was so many of them focused on women and the power of women in Ireland. It was such a theme without even, I don't think any of the tour guides who were fantastic that we had or in any of the locations meant to focus on the women. They're just there, Candace. It's just, there's such an important part of the history of Ireland.
Absolutely. And I find everybody just so warm and welcoming at every stop. And I think, cities, I don't really go to cities a lot, but what I love is that the cities like Belfast is really 350,000 people. And so really it's not a big, huge city to explore. And everything was so new.
Yeah.
You can just see the sort of this excitement of this building city after, everything they went through. So that to me was huge. And this trip, as you mentioned, really highlighted the impressive legacy and current influence of Irish women, from historical figures like Grace O'Malley to the female guides and artisans we met. The strength of Irish women was evident through our journey. So what was your impression of this aspect of the journey? How did it resonate with you?
Well, as you just mentioned, it wasn't just the historical past of women and the strength that they brought to the country and to their families, but all the way up to might get the title wrong, but the Bushmills, the head tastemaker, whatever that, sorry, I'm getting this all wrong, but you know what I mean? That's a woman and that's today, right? So the head mixer. So, to hear about it through the history was quite something when, again, some of our images of Ireland might not be particularly of females. You hear about Finn McCool, the giant from the Giant's Causeway. You hear about all the strong male leaders in the political parties. And you hear all these folklore stories that you think focus on the men. But when you get into it, sure, there are folklore stories about the women, but I'll tell you, more folklore about the men and more real stories about the women. And we got the chance, as you mentioned, to go to Belfast City Hall, and they just erected 2 new statues to women on International Women's Day. We found that in a few places just this past one. So it's not like it's a new theme, but it's finally being recognized, I think, which is really something for us all to see. And you're right, there's a vibrancy to Belfast. They just signed the peace agreement 26 years ago. That is not a long time, Candace. That is not a long time ago. So they're very excited and grateful for the peace that they have. And it shows in the city and how proud they are of their city. Oh my gosh, I've never met a prouder, bunch of people, our tour guide, but everyone on the streets, et cetera. We would literally, as you know, be driving along in the van and our tour guide would stop and say, look out the window. Look out the window. How beautiful is Ireland? We have to stop here, which is fantastic. And that was a recurring theme throughout the trip, actually. And into Derry, which is the walled city. So you feel quite contained, and it's a very easy city to walk because of that. There's certainly, lives outside the walls, but inside the walls, it's super easy to walk around and see what's there and get a sense of how proud they are as well from how far they've come. But the reminders are there. As you know, the reminders are stark. There's lots of murals. There's museums. There are things there that remind us that it wasn't always okay. But again, I go back to the word grateful with them. They seem so grateful for the peace process that they went through and where they are today.
I agree. And for me, as you know, the crier in the group, I found I
Yes.
was really impacted. I was really impacted by the Museum of Free Dairy. That was just wonderful. And also because the woman who led us through our tour lived in Canada for 30 years. Jean Haggerty, and that was just really, and her brother unfortunately was killed during Bloody Sunday. So to have her walk us through that tour and really share that very personal experience, um, was just wonderful, and it just brought together the history of that city so beautifully. And obviously we went to all the other museums that they have there as well. And so for anybody invested in sort of that civil rights, social justice movement and the history of Ireland, Derry is really the place to be, I think.
It is. And, and when we flip forward to today and the success of the Dairy Girls, which, is sort of takes us through the troubles, and the series ends up with the girls themselves going in and signing the peace treaty because they're old enough to vote on it, is quite something. So while the series is hysterically funny, it tells the story of what it was really like to live your day-to-day lives as a teenage girl during this time. And the writer, Lisa McGee, that's based on her experiences growing up. But the tour guide that we had, Charlene McCrossan, in Derry, actually went to the same school and is a Derry girl. So her insights and the stories. And as you know, this was my second time to Northern Ireland and to Derry. And every time I go there, I get more information in terms of either the history or where they are today and where their future is. So it's really inspiring. And I was just there 18 months ago. But even since then, the changes that I saw, the knowledge that I gathered, the food that I tried was so amazing. We have to talk about the food. You know that.
Oh yeah, we're absolutely going to that. But fans of Dairy Girls absolutely must plan a trip to Derry.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it. And let's go to the food, because that was, I had sort of this stereotypical expectation in my mind of, we were going to be plied with Irish stews and potatoes, but that was absolutely not what we experienced. I know you were as impressed as I was. We started off with Croag Patrick Seafoods and actually harvesting oysters out of the Atlantic, which was such a wonderful experience.
Yeah, the aquaculture right there is amazing. And we saw the theme of sustainability throughout the tour at the goat farm that we're at, and different ways that they are really harvesting the land. And it's not just for growing potatoes, but historically, as we know, that's what they're known for. And what was interesting, I think, to both you and I, was the way that they didn't call it potato famine. Those words are gone from their vocabulary. And
yes.
Hunger, the history behind that. There was food. They just weren't getting it. It was going to Britain. So they don't call it the famine anymore. They call it, the hunger. But again, potato, right? We always think about potatoes, but we tried, the foods that we tried were just fantastic. And I know the last time I was there, it was the same thing. They are really pushing forward their cuisine, and for good reason. Like, it is a food destination. There's no doubt about it in every city that we were in. And we tried many different things, as I said, and they're very proud of that the food is grown locally, and that, they really are inventive with their recipes and things. So yeah, one thing about Ireland that I think people miss is the food. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. A world-class culinary scene, farm to table experiences everywhere, and we had a great night in Sligo at Hooked, just incredible food straight out of the ocean. It couldn't get any fresher. So just fantastic. So from the wild Atlantic Way, our trip sort of took us to the coastal causeway, which starts in Derry, ends in Belfast. It's impossible to pick, just
You're
one.
You're going to make me pick one, right? You're going to make
but what were your top experiences sort of in Northern Ireland?
Well, I think what people know mostly about Northern Ireland is probably the Giant's Causeway, and it is fantastic. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site and well worth it. Just being there is just sort of breathtaking in the scope of it and just what caused it. And I'm not going to get into the scientific explanation because I will get it wrong. So people will have to go and look it up, but it is absolutely breathtaking. It's fantastic. And we were lucky enough to be there. Hot tip, going Sunday morning at 9:00. No one was there. And our guide said that was quite normal because it can be crawling with visitors. It's so popular. And people have been visiting it since the 1600s. So this is not a new tourist destination. So that was my second time there. Just as impressive the second time. Don't get me wrong. But the Carrick-a-Reid Bridge, the bridge across, I don't know, the ocean, like from, was quite something. And if you look at mine or Candace's photos and reels on Instagram, you'll see really what an experience that was. And I had not done that before. And again, I think that was from the 1600s as well. And fishermen would cross to the island and bring their fish back. they did not have the safety measures in place that we had. We were no risk of falling, but it was still sort of one of those moments, right? A breathtaking moment. And the greenery of the countryside that you experience there, and the crashing, of the waves in the Atlantic Ocean is quite something.
Well, you picked my top two experiences, so
I'm sorry.
no, Kathy, the Wild Atlantic Way was wild, as you might expect. 2,500-kilometer route that highlights Ireland's stunning coastal beauty. What was your favorite part of that?
Oh gosh, so much, right? Sleeve League, which, the high cliff over there, and the whole, you touched on the branding of the Wild Atlantic Way. It's so smart. It really puts it in perspective. They've been doing it for 10 years, and I think it has increased their tourism by 60%. Now, this is through the not through the pandemic when you couldn't travel, but since that they've recovered and more. So it's really sort of highlighted the areas of that part of the island, which everyone should really see. So I think Sleeve League was probably my favorite there. What about you?
Oh, surprisingly enough, I really thought it would be Sleeve Lake, which is stunning, and everybody should see it. But I was quite impressed with Neffin National Park.
Oh my God! Yeah.
And the bogs. I had no idea of the history of the bogs, let alone their environmental importance. And I was really impressed to see them sort of restoring these bodies. What they called bodies is that the little cottages that they're fixing up. And so, in not too long, hikers will be able to go to this national park, travel from body to body, and then, sleep under a dark sky canopy, which is just breathtaking. I can't imagine how beautiful that's going to be. I have to go back for that.
And our tour guide, his great grandmother was maybe great, but anyway, was one of those people who had lived in, right, these bodies or these cottages along the way. So that personal connection and the fact that they'll be putting a plaque up commemorating the women mostly who held the home fires there is going to be really interesting. And I had no idea about the peat fires either and all of that. So that was news to me. And again, I've been to Ireland a couple times, so that was my bad not noticing. But you learn something every time you go, which is what is important as well, I think, about Ireland and Northern Ireland.
One trip will never be enough. There's no doubt. All right. So people are going to go, but there's some things they should know before they go. So what are your tips?
Well, I think we can start with the weather. So I'll just say, and they say this themselves, no one goes to Ireland for the weather. Now, that's bad. We had some really sunny, lovely days, but maybe expectation-wise, don't expect those. So make sure you've got rain gear. If you're going to do some of these walks that we did, make sure that you have some of the rocks are slippery, so you want to make sure you have good shoes with good traction on them. Maybe layers. We used a lot of layers. Windbreakers, sweaters, etc. Be prepared to put those on and take those off. And I think pretty much any time of the year. The last time I was there was the end of November, and this time we were there sort of in the spring. Same sort of weather. In summer, I'm sure it gets warmer. So do pay attention to the weather. You're really going to prepare for it.
And of course, the currency, because the currency does change from euros to pounds. If you're traveling, from south into the north, you'll want to make sure you have that. My top tip would be honestly to pace yourself. It's a lot. And
it's a lot. Yeah.
You're not going to see it all. So pace yourself and really just enjoy it because
hire tour guides, don't you think? Because there is so much to see, and they're, again, so passionate about their history and their country. And you can obviously tailor the tour to what you want to do, but you will get more out of it if you use a tour guide. 100%.
Yeah. Our tour, D Morgan is, now what do they call it? A blue badge tour guide.
Right. Yeah.
And I would highly recommend people look for that designation. The amount of knowledge that she had our entire trip. I mean, I couldn't remember what we ate the day before, but the knowledge that was coming out of it was just so impressive and so incredible. And a tour guide really does make the experience.
Well, they phone ahead. They make sure you're booked in. They get your reservations. There was one thing we couldn't do because the rain, going back to the weather. So they'll find alternatives for you. So you're always going to find something to do. So many things to do, but unless you know what's there, you don't know. So hiring a tour guide will give you that expertise.
Absolutely. Kathy, thank you so much for joining me. It was so fun spending time with you in Ireland last week. I hope we get to do another trip soon. But I hope people do plan a trip to Ireland based on this discussion. What a journey.
What do we say at the end of something? Shanae.
Oh, Shanae.
No, okay, that's all right. Slange is a better one because it's like cheers. But Shanae, right? We learned that word every time we finish something on a tour guide. She'd say Shanae. That was Shanae. That's it. That's the end. So Shanae. Yep. I'm going to go read the rest of my Irish words. I got this little guide, right? So I'm going to go read the rest of my words.
All right, wonderful. Yes. Thanks, Kathy.